If you're interested in non-duality, but you're finding it really perhaps challenging to fully embody what everyone's talking about, this whole idea of self-realization and spiritual awakening, the difference between duality and the self as pure awareness, non-dual realization. I've put together this tutorial to go down this journey together into really understanding non-duality, but in very simple, felt, and embodied terms. It almost breaks my heart, you see, when I see so many seekers and so many people who are genuinely interested, who are hungry for deeper understanding. They're on a spiritual growth path. Perhaps they're following all those beautiful teachers from Rupert Spira and Muji, Ajashanti perhaps, or some of the classics, the sages like Nisargadatta and Ramana Maharishi, and reading text, perhaps starting to see how many debates there are online in forums, arguing the semantics of non-dual realization. And it can be pretty overwhelming. Do we follow the Advaita Vedanta strict path? Or do we go the direct path and meditate and hope? And for many folks I've heard that have really given this a go or have started this journey, it can feel pretty overwhelming. Now, not to say that one video is going to be everything, but because I think the topic is so important, I'm going to lean into it in a let's say a very cold way. I'm a simple person. I dedicated my life to the pursuit of wisdom when I was 13. Because of suffering, feeling like I was going through a dark night of the soul. So wisdom has been a singular focus of mine since that tender age. And I've gone down so many different rabbit holes, as many of us have, diving into knowledge and different teachings and different traditions, looking for what I named as wisdom. Fast forward all these years, I find myself now at the age of 54, realizing that all of the traditions, that all of the paths in their own way, when they are true, point to this non-dual reality, though they use different languages, though they use different words. But as a simple person, what I came to understand about wisdom was that wisdom was not words, even though I thought it was. That wisdom was the clear seeing and clear being, or we could say true seeing and true being. So when we see true, and when we be true, as in when we discover the true self, which means we automatically gain the way the true self sees as pure awareness, that is wisdom. When we don't have the seeing and the established sense of self being behind the words can be weaponized. They can become deeply polarizing, even painful. So that's why, as a simple person, and as a person that it was too important for me to just take only the words, I want to encourage you to see for yourself. And I know that that sounds impossibly difficult when we are overwhelmed by all the concepts and the beliefs. And so since the age of 17, I was asked to teach. And I certainly didn't know how to teach back then. I did my best, bless the 17-year-old Cole, for trying. I did say no when they asked me to teach. Two ladies asked me to teach, and I said, I'm 17, no. And they said, please, please. So I did in school, holidays. But what I'm saying is I've been on this path for a while. By the end of my 20s, I had a school, and now it's just gotten simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler, I can tell you. So what you get from me is a simplicity, hopefully, and an opportunity to perhaps take a little stroll in this video, hang out with me for a while, grab your coffee, grab your tea, and let's look at non-duality for ourselves. As simply as I can put this, the purpose of the non-dual direct path, or all of the teachings that go with non-duality as a means to self-realization, sometimes called enlightenment, it all centers around I. So important just to realize that that's always what we're on about. It's kind of the whole point of the whole thing, right? Is to really discover the answer to the question, who or what am I? Who or what am I? So yes, there are lots of beautiful nuances and little details all sprinkled around these various spiritual paths and the non-dual teachers and teachings, and there's different cultural influences and contexts, and sometimes even the word non-dual isn't used, but once you start to realize what it means, you pick it up and you see it's implied. But it's all about I. Who are you at your deepest, deepest, deepest depth? Is that even accurate? Who is this true self? What is this true self? And if you're on this path, it's because you likely have already got an intuition that there is more to the self than your passport photo and name and story. You have an intuition that there is more than you can see with the eye. That is one of the big reasons why people go on this journey. Another big reason that I've seen time and time again, and certainly these were both true for me at that young age when I started this journey, and that is suffering. Many of us come to this path on our knees. We really do feel tired, and it can be because of life events, certainly. And I also think truly there is a tiredness at a deeper place, where we are sending up that flare gun saying, okay, I'm tired of playing the Pac-Man game of life, chasing the next thing. There is something that feels dissatisfying. And in that sense, there can also feel like an aloneness. Can you relate to some of this? They can feel like, why is my family and my friends, why is it that not many people seem to be interested in this? Perhaps that's not true for you, but for me and many people who I've served, they look out and they realize everyone else seems to be more content. You know, perhaps in the last 10 odd years that has started to change because we've endured a lot of collective suffering, and it just seems to be relentless. The world seems to be pulling out the rug again and again. So that might have begun to change. But suffering can call us to this path, to this place of deep questioning. Whatever has brought you here, just know the non-dual path is about I. So if we link that to the primary keyword of non-dual, of course you would have seen it with hyphen, without hyphen, non-dualism, non-duality, non-dual, pretty much all the same thing, right? But we must contrast that. Non-dual surely therefore must be the opposite of dual. And dual tells us something. It's a clue. It says two, or it says divided, or it says separate. And other words that are similar or linked to or associated with non-dual, which I'm sure you've come across, like oneness, unity, ground of being. So the main focus seems to be, right, and you've probably picked this up, is that somehow this non-dual realization, this that many great teachers and teachings are pointing to, is the see for yourself direct realization that you are not a separate creature or you are not a separate self. Let's just be more clear that you are not a separate self, that somehow you are this non-dual self, that the true I is non-dual, undivided, whereas that the quote-unquote false self, the appearance, making a guest appearance version 2.0, forgive my humor, self, appears to be separate, but in fact is not. So if we stay with that as a foundation, we can get into some deeper territory now. But don't get lost in the deeper territory. Stay with that this is what's being asked of us, is the invitation is to question. Am I truly a separate self? Feels like it, especially on Mondays. Looks like it, especially in the mirror. So how can it be true? What is this all about? Well, let's find out. Now, there are many beautiful teachings, and all teachings are helpful pointers. I'm going to lean into some of those teachings a little bit later. Teachings like the path of negation, what's called object-subject, discernment. There are things that are really helpful, and I'm going to give them back to you in a simple form. But before we do that, I'd like to put a possibility on the table for you. And I want to invite you to stay with this. Now, you'll notice that when I teach, there's a lot of pause and there's a lot of slowing down. And I know that that's not very typical for content. Everyone wants something fast. And I too, when I look at videos, put it on chipmunk mode. I call it chipmunk mode. I tell my students as well, if you're bored, put me on chipmunk mode. And that's very much for the practical videos, which is fine. But when we are delving into the deeper nature of consciousness, when we are delving into the most sacred of topics, the most deserving of topics, the topic that is so important, the topic of you, the topic of the I, the true self, there is a natural reason to slow down. So I invite you into the pause, into the slowing down. Have your cup of coffee or tea, take a walk or sit somewhere quietly as we just unpack this, because there's a very important reason, and I'm going to put that up front so that you understand. The local mind or the human mind or this mind that we hear chattering away all the time, I sometimes think it's like a sports commentator. Its role is duality. So its function is to divide and to separate, which means that if we stay at the level of mind only, we get stuck in the non-dual discovery. And we do want to help the mind to understand, for sure. And we're not saying the mind is a problem, because it really isn't. But it is helpful to realize that the nature of the mind is to be like a prism and to divide light into all its colors. It is to separate things out. It is to create duality and the appearance of separateness. So we can only ever go so far. And we are going to satisfy the mind as much as we can. We're going to help the questions as much as we can. Because I do think it's important not to put the mind on a shelf and say it has no role. Absolutely, it's a sacred expression of life. And we do want to look after it, yeah? But the slowing down is to invite something else. That reality, non-dual reality, does not speak in the language of the mind. So the mind talks in language, doesn't it? In pictures. And language is designed to split things apart. We're from little kiddies, we are taught triangle, circle. to tell them apart. We use language to divide. But reality, this deepest, deepest reality, and the first expressions of the deepest reality don't talk in human language and thought. The language is not thought. The language is not English or French, right? The language, we could say, is silence and resonance. Silence and resonance. And another symbolic word for resonance is the songs of life, which I'll get into, right? And you'll see that it's something I use regularly as a way to shift us from language thought only to silence and resonance, because resonance is felt and known. Whereas if we want to put one more piece into this, so this is knowing and known, whereas language is knowledge. So language is knowledge, whereas reality, the deepest reality, is silence, and in the silence, resonance, songs, which live in the knowing. Now, there are a few semantics here that I'm intentionally not touching on to keep this beautifully simple and to lead us into this nice and gently. So the pausing and the silence is to invite you into the resonance, to invite you into the depth of you where knowing lives, instead of only compartmentalizing knowledge. We are going to give you knowledge. I'm drawing on a whiteboard. We're giving the mind knowledge, for sure. We are working with both, yeah? I mean, if we were purely teaching from the place of reality, and some great saints and sages have done that, they've literally been silent. So there's just a transmission of the knowing and the resonance, the song that arises from silence. My opinion is that nature gives us that, if we are knowing how to listen to it, and if we're available to pay attention to the song, to the resonance of silence transmitted by all of life in its natural expression. So at the deepest reality, it's always singing to us. But often we are so in the language and thought focus that we miss the deeper song. So you'll see when I teach this work, any work really, but especially this work, the pausing and the spaces are for that purpose. So to help the mind with some structure and some understanding, but also to invite you into the deeper knowing of what non-duality really is about, I'm going to put 3 words on the table. I'm going to give you these 3 words, and I'm going to offer you my meaning and the meaning that is reflected by non-dual understanding. And of course, the first word is self, because that, of course, is what we are focused on, right? This is discovering the true I for ourselves, not as belief, not as knowledge to fight over, but through direct, oh, you mean that, Cole? That deeper sense of ordinary self, the understanding of that, and then the resting as that, and then the unfolding of the journey of that discovery. So it all centers around self, and the revolution, the transformation, the remembering of the real self, as opposed to the self that appears real but isn't. So self. Some of my students and I on a retreat made the joke, we are selfing along, right? Like it was just, sorry, maybe we had to be there, but this idea of selfing along, like singing, but selfing, yeah? All right. The next word, and this one is often neglected in non-dual traditions. And I do want to encourage you to see the word in the way that I'm sharing it. And that is the word soul. In a lot of non-dual teachings, the soul is either briefly mentioned or entirely overlooked. And every teaching has its strengths and its weaknesses. It's designed that way. And it's, well, not intentionally, of course, it's just the nature of it. Mine included. When I bring teachings and share understandings, there will absolutely be gaps, for sure. And it's like a buffet. It's not going to be for everyone. Everyone must find the thing on the buffet that works for them, or the right key for their lock, yeah? But for a lot of folks, myself included, the understanding of the role of the soul has been significant. And I think by completely dismissing it or overlooking it, I do feel something has been missing. And I also understand why it is set aside, because there's so much language, sometimes superstition around the word. The word is often loaded with a lot of different beliefs and semantics. So I want to offer you the word in a simple, whole way and give it back to you perhaps, or to invite you into that understanding, because I do think it's a key piece. And then finally, yes, you've spotted the alliteration. The mind-like structure. It's helpful. It can be binding ultimately, where we let go of all the structures, but it can serve. So there is the word source. And of course, what I mean by source is what is often used as the word God, the divine. Sometimes we just acknowledge the intelligence in the fabric of life that grows eyelashes and turns planets and becomes this orchestra of diverse creative expression. So that's what I'm going to put on the table for you as a simple framework. And I'm going to bring one more word into the play of this language, which you've heard me already say. I'd like you to think of the soul and source as the songs of life. So let's go down this road together for a moment. Imagine openness, space, silence, not as like outer space, like literally the space that is right here, right now. Whatever room you're sitting in or wherever you are, we could say there is space. There is air in the space. There are things in the space. But there is underneath it all empty, open space. And if we use that space as a metaphor for the self, we'll say that that space is untouched by even the walls that appear. That space remains open even when things close and open inside of that space. My eyes open and close. My mouth opens and closes. Objects appear, things show up, and then they're not there. But still the space remains. This space, even if the mind doesn't have an understanding yet, get a sense of what we might be hinting at here, that what is meant by the self is this spacious I, this you, this I, that is pure awareness, that is just aware, not perception, not seeing or hearing, that is that which is behind even seeing and hearing, that is just aware, as if the space is aware. You, as awareness, are like this space, open, untouched by walls, unmoved by even a storm. And inside of you, things open and close like flowers opening and closing. Inside of you, walls appear and disappear. Inside of you, there are the songs of life. Imagine that these songs of life are made of space, but that they rise and fall automatically. That it is the nature of the space, the ultimate space, self. With an expression of love and peace. That it is the nature of the self. You imagine in the open openness. You imagine in the space that has no edges. You imagine that there is the first song. And let's call it the home song. And let's imagine that that home song, barely a thing, barely having any independent existence because it cannot exist without the space in which it has arisen. And this home song, the original song, has within it all of the potential of all of the universe. Pure love, the very fabric of being. And we can maybe call that source. And from this home song, this modulation, this function that arises in the open openness, this home song, because it is its nature, automatically becomes modulations and expressions of itself. And every expression has within it this original thread, this original home song is woven into every other variation in this symphony. And in this symphony of life expressing itself automatically, no puppeteer, no thing separate, just this beautiful home song, this love, this peace, modulating, becoming, expressing, because it is its nature. Universes, all manner of beings, all manner of sacred songs expressed, all having within this original home song, including the songs that we might call your soul. And in the ocean of the home song, a wave, an expression called your soul, which you can imagine as a number of songs woven, but still containing the ocean, and still beneath the ocean, this open silence. And the ocean's job is to become waves and to express. But all the while, the space, the pure open awareness remains. And for the joy and love of being a wave, of being an ocean. The price is paid. The price of overlooking the space, overlooking the home from which the home song originates, even overlooking the true I, the true self. For there to be the appearance of the ocean and the waves and trees and clouds and birds and planets and stars and galaxies, for that to even exist, one price, the price of overlooking the self, the forgetting. For there to even be atoms, for there to even be the possibility of the songs, some more dense and others light and refined, but still all songs, all in appearance, singing themselves automatically into expression. And so that we never lose our way, even though it can certainly feel like that and very painfully. So that even in the midst of the most challenging of expressions, for the song of your soul to weave into the song of a human form, with its own programming and its own design and its own reality of great density and survival focus. And yes, that one song may lose itself in the song of human form, but that, so that we don't lose our way, there is the possibility always that in amongst even the most densest of songs, even when songs have become what appears to be broken and fragmented or heavy and disjointed, that still whispering underneath is always the original home song. And that the opportunity and the invitation is there to listen deeper, to bring attention inwards, and to find those breadcrumbs, to find that thread of remembering, so that we might remember, I am not ultimately this song called the human body. I am not ultimately this song called human mind and thoughts. I am not ultimately these feelings, these emotions. I am not ultimately these perceptions of smell and taste and touch and sight that I trace back, that the home song is always there to call us. The home song is always there to translate. That the home song has never forgotten that the role of source is to hold within a blade of grass the smell of jasmine, the bird's song, the touch of the hand, the voice, that all of it still has the home song in it if we will choose to remember the language of resonance. Because it is time, because we've played the game and we've enjoyed the game of forgetting, and we've enjoyed And we have suffered for the journey of being in apparently the creation. And now we say, I want to go home. And at first we may mistake that home is a separate place. And at first we may mistake that the divine, that source, is a separate entity. And at first we may even mistake that the soul, our very own intermediary, that reflects both the source to us and helps us with this incarnation, that it seems separate, that everything through this prism of the mind seems separate. Yes, look how clearly it appears. But when we learn or we remember the song of resonance, the home song that is in all things, it whispers to us, it reminds us that love, that peace, that true content, joy belong not to separate things, but are the songs of the home song that reflect the ultimate true self. And that self is not separate, but is simply this that is aware of. It is this that can say, I, before I has a name, before I has the name of a song, because it is the space in which the songs arise. And the space does not touch the songs, and the songs do not touch the space. The self is not doing the songs, because then it would mean that they are puppeteered. Instead, I invite you into this understanding and the seeing. It is the nature of the self to express as the home song, as source. And source and self, the God of our being, is not separate. And it is this source, this sacred, divine home song that is automatically singing all expressions of itself, woven into everything in life. Which is why we can feel the resonant song if we slow down, if we are silent. You don't have to make your mind quiet. Your mind, every thought is even made originally of home song. There isn't anything that isn't woven. Where it becomes distorted is in its, the home song has become a faint whisper. Self-realization, the return home, what is quote unquote enlightenment, is when the songs of life start to reorientate towards the home song, remembering the home song. The soul starts to assimilate more and more of the home song. The wave becomes transparent in the ocean. The song starts to feel like silence, even if it is beautiful and loud. everything becomes more spacious. Everything starts to feel more transparent. And then the ordinary awareness that is not divided, that is the ground of being, that is the eye behind all apparent eyes, that is the awareness, the seeing behind all perception, is simply recognized, remembered, and known.